back to the Tailgate University. Today we're going to ponder the age-old question of why do cows die? Sarah, why do cows die?
Well, there's many reasons, but the first thing you have to ask yourself is, was she in good health? Did she have good nutrition? Some very basic questions that maintain the quality of life for an animal. Did she have what she needed to survive? And if the answer is yes to all of those questions, then we start asking ourselves, do we have a vaccination program? What else is going on that could have potentially caused that cow to die? And sometimes the answer is, well, I have no idea. She was perfectly healthy.
It's always the best looking cow in the field.
Always.
Always the best cow.
It's never the one who has problems.
No. And what we do, we go through a process of asking questions basically to eliminate things. And lots of times you get down to where you've eliminated almost everything and nothing adds up. But what we really need to be conscious of is that cows are not real smart about what they eat. And lots of times they will eat things that are not good for them. And if you've ever been around any of the veterinarians that have been in business for a long time, they'll tell you war stories about the things they pulled out of cow stomachs. But what we really want to talk to you about today is it's spring. We're having storms. In fact, we just went through a really bad storm night before last. And one of the very first things you should do as a producer is as soon as that storm is over and it's safe to move around, get out, scout all your fields. Number one, we're looking to see whether or not fences are down, trees are on the fence, whatever. But more importantly, we're looking for poisonous plants or things that might be harmful to our cattle. And one of the most common things that kills cows is wild cherry. And I think most all of us kind of know what wild cherry looks like. And it's in every fence row in East Tennessee. And it as long as it's nice and green, and we just broke this one off, as long as it's really nice and green,
show it up nice and close.
No problems. But the problem is we have a storm come through, break a limb out. Maybe we didn't even know that was a wild cherry tree. And then in a few hours to a few days, it starts to look like this. Now, if it's completely dead and crunchy, not a problem. But you can tell this one still is just wilted. And as it wilts, the cyanide becomes concentrated and it becomes very, very toxic to cattle. In fact, just the leaves on this piece that I've broken off here is enough to kill a normal sized cow. So it doesn't take very much. And in the wilted state, it is very, very, very toxic. So we need to be really cautious about this. And one of the things that you can do this summer that'll really help you out is go through and identify all of those trees, tie a piece of surveyor ribbon around them. Then come back in the fall after the leaves have fallen off and you can cut these trees down. And most of them are fairly small. You'll find them in the fence rows. And they're alongside most of our steel fence posts. Why is that, Sarah?
Because they're spread by birds. So as you can hear the birds in the background right now, these wild cherries will produce berries that are very, very good for wildlife, but not so great for our cattle species. And those birds will go along, they'll eat those cherries, and then they'll perch on a fence post, and when they relieve themselves, we get up a new sprout of wild cherry. And that's why we tend to see these so frequently there.
So your most common cause of wild cherry poisoning is whenever a storm comes through. But one thing you need to be particularly cautious about, most all of us take great pride in keeping our fence rows as clean as possible. We like to do a lot of spraying. Guess what? A lot of these really small wild cherries, whenever we spray these fence rows, are sprayed and wilt. And there's something about a wilted wild cherry that is particularly tasty to the bovine animal. So we can poison those without meaning to. So be really careful whenever you're spraying fence rows. Be really vigilant in identifying these trees and looking for things like limbs blown out or trees blown over. Identify those things and try to get them out of the landscape if possible.
So how do we identify those? So typically what we'll see is we have, I'm going to get a little closer so y'all can see this. We'll have an oval shaped leaf. It's slightly jagged on the edge. I don't know if I can get close enough for y'all to see that. Slightly jagged on the edge, but not very jagged at all. We have very smooth bark and have those little teeny tiny white dots on the bark. That's pretty typical of a wild cherry. And what we would like to advise you to do when you're spraying or after storm damage or anything, if you think it might have been a wild cherry, treat it as though it is. It's always better to be safe than sorry. Because how much effort does it take to cut one of these out and remove all of that leaf tissue from the area where our cattle are versus the cost to the cow? And that brings up another point. So what do we do when it is blown down and it's out in the field? Say it's been a couple of days and it's like this and we find it.
Well, hopefully we've not had any cattle eating on it, but if at all possible, immediately seclude the cattle away from that area. If you have to use an electric fence, if you have to move the cattle to a different field, move it until you can get that cleaned up. And it's not just a matter of removing that limb, but removing leaves that have fallen off of that limb as well.
You know, when you think about it, it's pretty easy for me to crumble leaves off of this one that's been wilted for a while. And you know, those leaves are still on the ground. If cattle have access to them, that could still be enough to poison them and cause death. So we need to be extra careful about that.
And, you know, wild cherry is not the only thing that can kill cattle. So my rule of thumb is if you grow it in your landscape, I've heard the war stories about killing lots of cattle with different things, but if you grow it in your landscape, especially things like Japanese yews and some of our other ornamentals, when you trim those bushes, please don't throw them across the fence to your cattle or where somebody else's cattle might be able to get to them. Because so many of the things we grow as ornamentals can be detrimental, if not deadly, to our livestock. And of course, if you have any doubt whether or not something is poisonous, then give us a call. We're just a phone call away, and whenever we get back in to our offices to where we can meet face to face again, we'll be more than happy to take a look at these things and help you identify what it is, what to do about it, whether or not it's poisonous.
And in the meantime, you can send us pictures and we'll help you that way.
Exactly.
So I guess that's it on storm damage. We thank you for tuning in to Tailgate University, and hopefully you found this beneficial. We're always looking for new topics. So if there's something specific that y'all want to hear about, reach out to us, comment on a post, send us an email, call us, because we want to provide the information that you all need.
And as always, stay safe, and we look forward to being back to one-on-one.
Bye, guys.